you know that your sensitivity makes work more overwhelming? In this video, I'm going to break down why that might be, kind of the different things that happen as a sensitive person that might make work more overwhelming in some ways than it would for someone who isn't as sensitive. I'm going to give you some tips of how to manage that and really let your sensitivity be an asset at work instead of a liability. And then finally, if you stick around to the end, I'm going to share a few practices that you could do anytime during the day to help you feel a little more grounded and present. My name is Rachel. I'm a somatic therapist and coach, and I'm really excited to share this video. I wanted to share this because so many of the people I work with, I know my own personal experience, work can feel so much when you are sensitive because you're experiencing so much. You're picking up so many people's energy, so much emotion, so many things like bright lights or the smells, the sounds all around you, sharing space. There's all of these things that can make it just feel totally overwhelming and hard to stay grounded and connected to yourself, all while you usually have responsibilities and there's stuff you have to get done. So, I wanted to make this just to help you understand a little more about what might be going on, why it's so overwhelming, and then hopefully give you some actionable tips that might make it a little more bit more manageable for you. And then as always, I love to share some practices that help to really work on the energetic level to keep you a little more connected to yourself, a little more grounded, and less impacted by the world around you. Before we get into kind of the challenges of being sensitive in the workplace, I really want to take a minute to acknowledge that as a sensitive person, you are probably really good at what you do. You're probably really attuned to the people you work with. You're able to really understand larger dynamics, which we'll get to how that can be a lot later, but you're able to see all these subtle things, which I think makes you a really good leader because you're able to understand people in a way other people aren't. You're able to understand how things go together, how this is connected to that, or this person's reacting to that in a way that maybe other people don't see. So I think it can be a huge asset. And especially if you're working with people in any way, with kids, you are so naturally attuned, you're so naturally aware. There's a way, if you are really taking care of your sensitivity, it can be such an asset to the work you're doing. And that being said, I don't want to disregard the challenges that come along with it that are very real. So I want to break this down into just like a few categories of where you might see challenges and then what you can do about it. So the first thing to think about is scheduling. This is something I know with myself, with my clients, is like if your schedule's too packed, even just looking at a calendar and having too many meetings or too many things on your calendar can feel overwhelming in itself, where someone else might not necessarily have that same level of nervous system stress activation when there's not space for you. Because that's the reality. As a sensitive person, you are picking up so much more information, people's energy throughout the day. And if you don't have time to unwind, to check in with yourself, to release that stress, or even just to be away from people, to have alone time, that it accumulates to that point of overwhelm and exhaustion. And so when you aren't in control of your schedule, when you have to work so much because of productivity requirements or just because of the economy being so off that you have to work more to get paid even less sometimes, like there's this constant push to do more when actually as a sensitive person it's really important you pick quality over quantity, and that's what makes you really good at what you do. So there's this scheduling piece of just like the control you have that you don't have that can be really overwhelming. And you often want to be able to be prepared for your day. So if someone's just like putting meetings on your calendar, or if there's something that kind of comes up out of nowhere and you had your day planned in this specific way, it can feel really overwhelming, especially when it goes into those things that you need just to take care of yourself on a basic level. Another category that's really important to understand is just relationships. That could be with your clients, with your colleagues, with your manager, all the relationships that are required for work. Because the reality is, you feel things really deeply. So when you are interacting with people, you are, even if you're trying your best not to, you are picking up on, you're feeling, you're absorbing other people's experience. And so that's, again, an amazing asset to be that empathetic. And if you are doing that all day, it can feel kind of like you've lost connection to yourself. I know if there's like too much interaction for me in a day, I feel like I'm like short circuited in a way where like it's like I feel really dull. Like it's hard for me to pick up what's going on. It's like my system gets overloaded. And then there's the reality of when you're working in places, you might be having to share space with people. You might be having to really like I make phone calls when other people there, or do all these other things that you would prefer to not have kind of other people's energy, other people's reaction. Because even if they're just doing their own thing, you can still pick it up. You still know they're there. You're still experiencing their stress in some way. So there's just this level of like a constant state of input into your nervous system, even if they're people you like, right? Like it can be awesome if like things are good, if the vibes are good, then it's great to be around people. It's just with work, often that's usually not the case. People are usually stressed. They're bringing in a lot of their own stuff into the space that you have to share with people. And then there's a lot around navigating boundaries with people at work, because I think as sensitive people, you want to help, you want to do a good job. You are there, you're attuned. And so often you might get a lot of extra stuff put on you. You are able to kind of do more or keep it together, and then more and more gets put on you, and that exhausts you. Even if like in the moment you think you can do it, it might just be an immediate yes, because you want to help someone else feel less stressed. And then there's this aspect of feeling like you have to kind of mask. So I always say it takes so much energy to pretend you feel differently than you actually do. And this is a requirement in life. I understand that. But sometimes, especially if you're more sensitive, you might really feel things deeply. You might just like tear up when something really emotional is said, or you might have a big reaction to hearing something in a meeting. And then it takes extra strength to kind of like hold it all together, especially in this with this idea of professionalism being that you have to like be buttoned up and keep it together and be kind of a robot, in my opinion. So I think there's all these ways that relationships as a sensitive person are something you're really good at, and if there's too much time with people, it's really easy to lose yourself in other people's wants and needs, other people's energy, and get lost in yourself. And then it kind of leads you in that place of overwhelm, hard to make decisions. You're not sure what you want. Like a lack of clarity comes in that moment when you're just around people too much. And then another broad category to think about is just the environments you work in. So this can just be at the sensory level. What is the lighting like there? Is there a lot of scents or noises, or, like touch, all of the senses? As a sensitive person, you're often really aware of senses, really aware of sensory information. And if there's too much of it, it's really easy to get overstimulated. And then this is like the physical environment, but also thinking about the culture of where you work. the stress level of where you work, because that is a large part of your experience. So I often think about sensitive people just happen to be open. So when there's a lot of stress, a lot of things that are unacknowledged, a lot of things that people are doing aren't being said, that are shady, that are toxic, the sensitive people are the ones that often pick it up just on an energetic level, because you're open, you're aware, and other people might just be projecting and ignoring and pushing stuff down. And I think as sensitive people, you are the one who really picks that up. So that can be a really big thing in an environment when there's a toxic workplace culture, when there's even just like toxic relationships or extra stress. All of that is going to impact you because you absorb all the stress, even if you would like not to. I totally feel that. I wish this was something I could turn off. It would be nice to be able to turn it off sometimes, but it is also often can be used to help bring a mirror to what might need to be seen, even if that's not the job you want to have. It does require a lot more energy just to move through when there's conflict, when there's stress that's on the team, when there is a manager who isn't doing their job. And you have to kind of understand and pick up the slack in ways because, again, you're naturally attuned to notice dynamics, to notice what's happening. And when a manager isn't doing their job, often you're the one who kind of steps in and does it to take care of everyone else because you want other people to feel supported and good in an environment, which makes you amazing and sets you up to be exhausted and overwhelmed. All right, so here are some of the tips. We've gotten to the tips section of what you can do about all of this. It sounds kind of like doomsday when I just said it all out loud, but there are things you can do. It is totally manageable. Now, I'll just break it down the same categories. So, with scheduling, one thing is control what you can control. Obviously, you don't always have control of your schedule, but being able to protect your time and energy where you can. If that is little breaks during the day where you have a little downtime, maybe do one of the practices I show a little later, or if you are able to just really set time on your calendar in your schedule to take a lunch break, to take time to like take a break in order to process all the like all the sensory information, all the people's energy through your system before you have to go to the next meeting or go to the next thing. And then I think it's just really important to think like long term, think about your whole life of what you want to have energy for. And sometimes, even outside of work, you might just be packing your schedule with social stuff and fun stuff and hobbies and all of that. And that's great. It's just being realistic about how much energy you have and where you want to be putting it. Because sometimes, if you overbook even fun stuff, then you don't have time to replenish your energy to go back and be a little more focused at work, and the more important part, to just enjoy your life outside of work as well. In terms of the relationship part of work, some tips to think about is just one, to start tuning in to notice how you're feeling around certain people and trust that. So, obviously, there's people you can't control if you have to interact with them, and you might have a little more control than how much time and energy you give certain people, because the reality is people are impacting you in different ways. And being able to get really clear about that helps you to be more discerning about who to spend time with, who leaves you feeling energized and uplifted, and who to avoid spending time with where you just leave feeling drained and exhausted. And then another thing is really being able to tune in to that like moment where it tips. Because often when we are in a place of being social around other people, you might be unaware of when you've kind of reached your limit. and being able to honor that as much as possible. Like, obviously, you have to go to meetings, you have to go to your responsible with things. But if there's moments when you could step back, or if you have a choice to take time to yourself, how do you really honor that when you need it? And again, you don't always have control, but in the moments you do have control, how do you honor that? And then another piece here is there's a practice we'll do at the end, but really working energetically to not take on other people's energy, or to be able to discern, is this my energy? Is this their energy? Because the interventions are different. So if it's someone else's energy, there's things you can do to kind of block it out. If it's your stuff, then there's things you need to do to process it. So being able to be really discerning around that. And then how do you really protect your time and space from people? I love chatting with people when I'm in a shared workspace, and sometimes there's not time for that. Sometimes I actually need space. So how do you communicate that to the people you're around, the people you work with, that there's certain times that you actually just need to focus and get shit done? And then in terms of environments, I think there's things you can think about just on a sensory level. So often, as a sensitive person, we often think about our senses as something that overwhelms us. Like there's too many loud noises or too much scent. But it's also important to think that you can use senses to have a positive experience. So if you can't control a lot of the things in your work environment, there are some things you could do, like in terms of lighting. Is it finding a lamp and warm lighting if you have that option? Things in terms of like scents you enjoy, or ways to listen to music or block out loud noises. Just trying to cultivate like an enjoyable, pleasurable sensory experience as much as you possibly can. If that's some essential oils or candles, or some lo-fi music, whatever it might be for you, to create that space, again, what's within your control as much as possible. And then thinking, when you do get breaks, and you should take breaks, even if you feel like you shouldn't, how can you kind of step away from the space you're in, get time outside if possible, some fresh air, some plants, some tree, whatever might help you to just replenish your energy a little in those moments when you're taking breaks. And then in terms of the workplace culture piece, it's really important that you're able to kind of toggle out. So if you're in a really toxic workplace culture, this happens even in a relationship or a family, I think as a sensitive person, you're more likely to take on responsibility for what's happening. So it can be easy to feel like it's your fault if something's not working, or it's your fault you're exhausted, even though everyone else probably is around you too. And so it's important to be able to toggle out and really see how the systems you work in, this larger system we all work in, impacts you to just keep doing more and more and disconnect from yourself, and the ways that people are benefiting from that, right? If you work for a big corporation, your overworking is like feeding the pockets of whoever's at top. Even if you work in healthcare or you work in a nonprofit, there's people benefiting from your labor and keeping you working, 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 that actually has nothing to do with you and your value and your worth. And so it's really important to be able to see when those larger things are impacting you, and just like send it back. Like, I refuse to take on this guilt. I refuse to take on the pressure that's being put on me for non-urgent things. To just trust yourself and your experience and what you know is right in the work you do. All right, for this practice, I'm just gonna show my hands because it's a practice you can do with your hands. And I love this because you could really do it even in a meeting, like under the desk, and no one would know you were doing it. So, the practice, we're going to just start by bringing our thumb and pointer finger together, then our thumb, middle finger, thumb, ring finger, thumb, pinky finger. So, that's the basic part of this practice. There's a few options to add to it. You can inhale, thumb and pointer finger, exhale, inhale, exhale, and then just continue with that practice, moving with your breath, feeling the touch. So coming back to your body, and usually our hands are a little more comfortable place to be aware of when we're experiencing intense energy from other people or stress or intense emotion. Bringing awareness to the hands can help us to find a sense of safety in our bodies. Cool. So you can stay with the breath. Another option is to add a mantra that's 4 words. I like a simple one is I am here now, or I am calm now. And then you can just go, each finger is a word. And then we'll just pause, dropping attention into the hands. Notice how you're feeling after that practice. All right, the second practice is a grounding practice you can use. You could use it at your desk, you could use it in meetings as a way of just bringing awareness back to yourself and your body. So, the first thing is just to bring awareness to your feet, feeling your feet on the ground, imagining gravity kind of pulling your feet onto the ground. And then we're gonna just do a little bit of a rock. So inhale, weight towards the toes, exhale, weight towards the heels. And this could be really subtle. Like you might not even, if there's a lot of people around, you could just push into your toes, push into your heels. No one's gonna notice that. But if you have a little more room, a little more space, you could do a rock. And then you can just pause for a moment. Could do a little side to side rock. So we're just trying to bring as much attention to the feet as possible. And then coming back to center, another thing you can do here is kind of a shifting your weight from one foot to the other, almost like you are walking. So this does some bilateral stimulation here. And I'm doing it now, just like pushing one foot and then the other. And this is really subtle. People wouldn't notice this, but if you want, you could even like lift up and really walk one side to the other. And then again, just taking a moment to pause and noticing how you're feeling after that practice. And this final practice is a visualization. So I'm going to just demonstrate it in this seated position, but you can really do it in any position you'd like. You can have your eyes open for it. You can have your eyes closed. I like this one if there's like someone's got some bad vibes, intense energy in the space, just to help kind of give you a little relief from their energy. So, the first thing is just to again connect to the feet. So, our feet are just a way to feel grounded. Anytime you feel overwhelmed, when you bring attention to your feet by movement or even just like feeling your feet on the ground, helps for you to come back to your body. From there, instead of doing probably what you would like to do, I know what I want to do often, of like pushing the energy away, instead of fighting it, you're just going to allow the energy to be there. You can feel it in your body. We're going to add some breath to this. So we inhale and we feel the energy, the bad vibes, the stress. And exhale, imagine it's moving through your body from the top down to the bottom, coming out your feet, going down into the earth. And just moving like that. Inhale, awareness to the stress. And then exhale, just sending it through the system, through the body, down into the earth. And you could do this for as many breaths as you need to. It can also be helpful to even imagine as you're sending that stress, that energy down into the earth. The earth is taking that energy, metabolizing it, and turning it into life in other forms. So instead of pushing this away, we're just taking it, allowing it to move through the system and repurposing into the earth as another flow of life. Very woo woo, but if you want to go woo woo, go woo woo. You can just take a final breath like that. And then again, just notice how you're feeling. Maybe it feels a little less intense. Or maybe you feel like you've come back to your energy. Or maybe a little more in your energy than being overtaken by someone's bad vibes. I hope you have some actionable strategies and practices to help make work feel a little more manageable, like your sensitivity is an asset instead of a liability. Please let me know what resonated in the comments down below, or if there's other videos or topics you want me to cover, please let me know in the comments. And if it was valuable, give it a like, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. And I can't wait to see you again soon.